I am so lost right now, physically and mentally. Metaphorically also. Just got in the car this morning and just started driving north. I guess just really for the joy of getting lost, really. I just really love driving as well. I really love my car. There's something so freeing about being behind the wheel of a car. Mine especially. I do love it to pieces. Personally, I prefer a manual. I find that much more freeing, but beggars can't be choosers. I've got a manual at the moment though. I've tried a few automatics, they were just never really the same. At the moment though, I've got a 2005 Mazda MX-5. It's a 1.8. She's dark blue, she's got a soft top. The roof down is excellent. I call her the Maserati. She's beautiful. She's beautiful. I picked her up on Facebook Marketplace a couple of years ago. I think it was 2024, December 2024. And she was only £3,000 when I bought her, which is pretty good. Pretty good actually. Good deal I thought, because she only had 35,000 miles on the clock, which is, in 20 years at the time, not much. Not much. She'd been in dry storage for about 10 years since her first owner died. And then I got her. So I'm the second owner, really. She had yearly maintenance while she was in storage even, which was quite rare to find something that gets even yearly servicing that's not in storage and is on the road. Beautiful deal though. Beautiful. Oh, she's a hell of a lot of fun. She's a wonderful car to drive. I routinely take her on long drives just for the sake of driving her. You know, there's something in me, maybe then there's another girl like her. My little windshield, sorry. We've been up to Glasgow lots and lots of times, me and the Miata. We've been down to London a couple times for some reason. We've even been to Portsmouth for some reason. We drove down to Portsmouth one day. But I've finally found an excuse to take her on the European continent. So that's where we are right now. We're in Sweden somewhere at the moment. It's been years that I've wanted to bring her down here. I mean, me and my dad always talked about doing a European road trip. We wanted to go north to south. So from the UK down to Italy, somewhere like that, but the timing's never really worked out. I do apologize. I'm supposed to guard the wind, but it's sort of being blown over by the wind. No, the timing's never worked out, unfortunately, with me and my dad, but I do love to get lost in the car. And that's sort of why I came here. Like I say, I don't actually know where here is. I'm just driving north in Scandinavia. Obviously I had to drive south, take the ferry over, Netherlands, Denmark. Now we're in a bit of Germany as well. Now we're in Sweden. Just sort of hitting the road every morning, heading north. You know, no specific place I want to get to. Nowhere I particularly want to go in between, just getting in the car and driving. But I think it's important to get lost sometimes, you know. I think it's good for the mind. I really do. I think it's important to get lost, and I think it's also important to be able to recognize when you're lost. You know, so many of these excellent places that you get to see. I mean, here's wonderful now. Unfortunately, the lighting's terrible over here, but behind is beautiful. But so many of these places, these beautiful places, are totally off the beaten track. And as a wise man once said, you have to be lost to find a place that can't be found. Elsewise, everybody would know where it was. That was Hector Barbosa from Pirates of the Caribbean. I love those films, man. That was in at World's End when they were trying to find the edge of the world. They couldn't use the map, so they had to get good and lost. And they sailed off the edge of the world. I love those movies, man. But it's true. It's true. What he said is not totally stupid. You know, you have to get lost to find somewhere new sometimes, somewhere that you never even would have thought of before. you know, so many of these places, you'll be told where to go, you know. You'll be told, you gotta go to this place, you gotta go to this place. But sometimes it's good for your mind to just get lost, good and lost. And then you'll find somewhere you'll never forget, you know. And then you'll eventually get unlost. And then you know where you are, and then you can come back to that place. You know, I'm lost at the moment. I'm gonna be lost for a while, but eventually I'm gonna have to drive home. You know, eventually I'll find my bearings, unfortunately. But that's the thing, really, isn't it? You know, you got to be able to get lost, but equally as important, you got to be able to recognize when you're lost. You be able to recognize and then get unlost. You know, sometimes you're just driving along, realize you're not actually where you want to be, and then what's the first step to getting to where you actually want to be is recognizing that you're lost in the first place. You recognize you're lost. You gotta have a look at the surroundings. All right, I don't know where I am, you know. Let's have a look. Adjust the GPS, maybe put a little UE. Wham, bam, thank you, man. You're back on your way, and you're going to the right place this time. But you recognized it, and that's important. You know, so many of us are just cooked mentally these days, because you know, so many people, myself included, you know, I don't want to put myself above anybody. Just look around sometimes. You won't recognize a single thing around you, and you still won't even realize that you're lost. You won't be able to recognize it. And then what? You know, you can't get to where you want to go if you can't even recognize that you're not going in the right direction. You know, it's a wise thing. I should write that down, actually. I should. But, you know, it's... Oh, my coffee's done, I think. Oh, yes. Something I've noticed, you know, there's so much going on constantly. Everything's constantly in your face these days. Oh, we're gonna have to boil a little bit more. No, that should be fine, actually. Everything's in your face, though. Got to constantly turn around. It's got me turn around sometimes. The flashing lights, all in your eyes, you know. They're freezing your brain. You're getting analysis paralysis. Your brain's getting into a state that you can't even recognize you're lost. You know, all these flashing lights. You can't even recognize what's wrong with you anymore. It's strange. It's really, really strange. It's really strange. All these, you know, look over here. The housing prices are totally screwed up. And look over here. There's a man with a mustache and he's tying children to the train tracks. Kim Kardashian just farted into a walkie-talkie, and you can buy the audio. You know, you can you can buy the audio of that. People would buy that. I'd probably buy that, but people would buy that. You know, Belle Delphine in the bathwater. It's a distraction. You know, people are being distracted. They've got you looking over here. It's a classic magician's trick. You know, the last place the magician wants you to look at is the cards in his hand. You know, oh, look over here, look, and he's doing something shifty down here with the cards. That's what's going on these days. You know, our thoughts, all of us, our thoughts are being so diluted with these narratives. You know, you gotta follow this. You gotta follow. You gotta check that out, man. You gotta be checked. It's being pushed on you. You know, it's pushing down, and it feels like we're losing our way. It feels like we're losing our ability to think critically and introspect. You know, speaking for everybody here, but speaking for myself, you know, sometimes you got to recognize it. But the end point of all this is that, you know, at the end of it, your goals become diluted, because now you don't even know where you're going. You don't even recognize you're lost. Your goals, you don't know what they are. You're being told what they are, and you're lost, and you don't recognize it. And so how can you do anything about it then? You don't even know. And so now you're heading for the waterfall at the end of the world, man. You got good and lost. You're heading for the waterfall. You're going to sail off the edge. You're in Pirates of the Caribbean. You're with Sao Feng's crew. You don't even know it, man. You don't even know you're heading for the waterfall. You don't even know it's there. It's there. You're looking at your pal. Shit. You're looking at your friend Robert, who's driving the boat. You're going, Robert, it fucking goes down. And he's going, no, it doesn't go down. It doesn't go down. It does. Man, it does. And you're going to go down with it. You know, your brain's running on overdrive, man. We can't even see the waterfall, and there is a waterfall coming. You know, that's not a big political statement. I mean a personal, philosophical waterfall. It is coming for all of us. And you don't even know it. You're lost. You don't even know it. Oh, wow. Wow, that's strong. That's nice, though. I've never used this before. I've never used one of these. That's delicious, though, actually. But you're thinking too much, man. Your brain's in overdrive, and you've thought yourself so hard that you thought yourself out of living life. You know, you're not living properly anymore. So many thought process, so many trains of thought, choo-choo, you know, going on in your head. All these narratives that are being pushed on you as well. That's the problem. You know, you can, if you decide a narrative, that's fine. But you know, this stuff that's being pushed on you, it's stopping you from actually achieving. It's stopping you from even realizing what you want to achieve. Never mind achieving it. You know, it's stopping you from living your life properly. You know, all these things. Oh, you know, we shouldn't do that because Instagram said it's not good. You know, Instagram says there's somewhere better. You know, oh, you shouldn't do that because what will people think of you? You know, how will you be perceived? What if you post that on Instagram and it doesn't, people don't like you? What if you fall behind others? What if other people are ahead of you, man? Other people get married, other people are doing their master's degrees, and what are you doing, man? You're getting lost in the woods. Maybe that's just a me thing, but you can totally optimize yourself out of living properly. You know, how many people do you know that go traveling to a big city? You know, I did it in London. I've been to London a few times. I don't like it. But every time you go there, there's a new Instagram hole in the wall spot that you have to try. And there's a line of people way down the block. So many, hundreds of people, thousands of people. Because everybody's reading the same thing. Everybody's deciding the same thing. Well, someone said this was the best, so it must be the best. Now I'm going to listen because it was recommended to me on Instagram. You know, all these people in waiting in queues. You see it for some overpriced bakery. What are they actually selling? Croissants. Croissants are shit, man. It makes me want to puke seeing these queues queuing up for shit. You know, just man, I'm getting a little bit too excited about this. Maybe I shouldn't be drinking a coffee, but it's true. You know, maybe I'm getting angry at myself. I can be victim to this. I often am. Sometimes when you're traveling, though, you know, you can't go to these trend places. You got to go somewhere else. You got to go to the small family restaurant in the back alley with the guy with the knife and the rapist. You know, that's where you got to go, because you know what? Maybe you'll eat a shitty meal. Maybe it'll be disgusting, but I can promise you, you are never going to forget that. It seems to be a thing these days, though, doesn't it? You know, the kids. I got a younger brother. He's only 16, but he's all in on self-improvement and, you know, going to the gym and doing his MMA. And he fucking eats hard and he fucking trains hard and he doesn't drink and he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. That's a good thing. You know, I'm really proud of him. He's a good kid. But I'm worried for him also, because you are going to miss out on so much by not just letting yourself get into a little bit of trouble here and there, you know? A little bit of trouble. You know, I used to know this guy. He was like a superhuman athlete, man. He ran races for breakfast. He loved it. He triathletes, Ironmans, whatever, man. This guy was doing it. And one day, a couple of years ago, he ran just a 10K for charity, you know, a fun run. He had a heart attack on the finish line, dropped dead. Guy never woke up. It was a real loss to the world. Hell of a nice guy. You know, hell of a nice guy. And he spent his whole life training and doing all this stuff. You know, doing all this running and optimizing. He didn't even live to see 60. You know, that's 20 years below the life expectancy, and he didn't even make it. I don't know how old he actually was, but he wasn't 60, that's for sure. So yeah, I'm all for self-improvement. You know, it's a good thing, 100%. I would never tell anybody not to try and improve themselves, but you've got to live next to that. You know, you've got to live your life on the side of that as well, you know. You've got to get into a bit of trouble sometimes. I think life became so much easier when I learned a couple of things. First of all, it's cold as balls out here, man. It's Sweden, it's been raining all day, got caught in a biblical downpour. It's cold, man, I'm shivering. But all those things you're focusing on that aren't happening in your own life. You know, all these things. Oh, I wish I was doing this. I wish I was getting married. I wish I was getting engaged. I wish I had that job. What's that going to matter in 10 years from now? It's not. And I can tell you, because 10 years ago I was worried about things, and I couldn't even tell you what I was worried about now. You know, you're going to be shown the next set of flashing lights anyway, you know, in your eyes, and they're going to tell you what to look for. Good friend of mine, he said it pretty good. He said, life is a tale told by an idiot. It's full of sound and fury, but it signifies nothing. You know? Wow, man, that's good coffee. You can waste your whole life focusing on the sound, focusing on the fury. You know, that sounds interesting. What's that? I like the sound of a bit of fury in the morning. I like a bit of fury. I like a bit of sound as well on the side of that, please. You know, you can focus on that stuff, these things that the people build up, and they build up to you. They tell you, you know, this is the narrative. Here's your narrative. Here's what you're supposed to do. Here's the life you're supposed to lead. Here's the narrative you're supposed to follow. It's like Westworld. You're like a robot in Westworld. But all these things that people are telling you are meaningless, you know? And sure, they could be meaningful, but they're meaningless to you not because they're being told to you. If you took a bit of time, thought, you know what, actually, okay, I would like that job. I think that would be good for me, and you decided that for yourself, that's a meaningful goal. That's something meaningful that you can work towards. But it's meaningless when other people are telling you, and that's when you're doing it. You know, at the end of the day, there's only one person who's really actually qualified to tell you how to keep fucking spilling this stuff, how to tell you to live your life. There's only one person for that, man. There's only one person who can know that stuff. And they're not going to be on Instagram, they're not going to be on the news, they're not going to be telling you what's going on you know, they're not going to be telling you what's going on the other side of the world. It's going to be you, man. You got to decide. You got to decide. I've got to decide. You got to separate, you got to filter out the noise. You got to separate the noise from your actual thoughts, you know? And you got to decide what's really actually meaningful, what's really important to you personally, and to me. What's really important to me right now is not spilling any more of this coffee. I don't want to totally dismiss all those things I said, you know, getting this job or getting married or getting engaged. I don't want to come across these things can be meaningful goals, 100%. If you find meaning in them, but you have to decide that for yourself. You know, you can't just be told. That's what I'm trying to get at here. You have to evaluate it. You have to sit down, do the math, you know, X, Y, Z, integrate this, differentiate that. This is my goal. Then that's absolutely brilliant. That's fantastic. You can figure out for yourself. Not many people can do that. I can't do that. I don't know what I want at the moment. You know, but I do know it's not what the people are telling me I want. Because that's not true. The second thing that I learned in life that made it a lot easier actually is that everybody's much stupider than they come across, you know? Everybody's not nearly as smart as they think they are or they want you to think they are. And I'm not an intelligent guy, you know? I'm aware I can be a bit of a dunce, but if you think about the average intelligence, the average guy, how intelligent he is, half of everybody is less intelligent than that. You know, that's stark. That's something to chew on. You know, chew that up and spit that out. And that's not a bad thing, you know. Intelligence is not, I don't think it's nearly as critical to being alive that people make it out to be. You know, I see some people these days, I see myself, I'm like, how have I actually even lived this long? I don't know. But what I'm trying to get at here is these people are not as intelligent as they want you to think they are. And so why are you telling them to live your life? You know, chances are you're smarter than 50% of people trying to tell you that. So why are you sipping the Kool-Aid that these midwits are pouring for you? You know? That sounds pretty insane to me. You don't got to put yourself above these people. You got to realize that these people are not smart enough to dictate what your life should be to you. You know, you shouldn't look down on these people by any means. You know, I've been a victim of it myself. I've been a perpetrator of it. I've caught myself telling people what should be meaningful to them, and I shouldn't do that. But it happens sometimes. You shouldn't look down on them for it, but you should recognize it, you know. These people are no more qualified than anybody else. Even the most intelligent person is no more qualified to tell you how to live your life than you are. Wow, that's going cold really, really quickly. That's still good actually though. You can rely on people. You can rely. I don't want to say like you can't rely on people, because you can. They can help you choose. They can guide you. They can give you a little clue. Like in a house episode, you know. He doesn't know what it is. He got it right, and then they were getting better, and then they start getting worse, and then he's got no idea, and then Wilson just happens to say something that perfectly lines up with the case, and house storms out, and he's cured it, and he needs more mouse bites, and then the guy gets better at the end of the day. That's what you can do. You can listen to what people say, but you don't have to take it so much to heart, you know. I always forget it. I always forget I'm the one who's in control. Sometimes you just need to remember, you know, I'm the one who's pouring over the map here. You know, I've got the map in front of me, I'm pouring over it, I'm trying to decide. I just need to pick a direction sometimes. And yeah, that can be hard. Even that can be very difficult, picking a direction, because you can immediately stumble into a problem when you pick a direction. You can immediately stumble into it, you can stumble into it later. And that problem is scary. What if I've picked the wrong direction? You know, what if I've gone the wrong way? It's perfectly possible. In fact, it's likely. It's guaranteed sometime, but it's likely. Pretty much every time you make a choice, it's likely you're going to pick the wrong one. And sometimes, like I say, sometimes you'll find out straight away. Immediately, bam, there's the consequences. Sucker punched in the cheek, you know. Sometimes it will take a little bit though. Sometimes you put in a bit of a hustle, bang, bam, a couple shots, and then your body kicks you and you're down. A couple minutes later, you know, a couple of rounds later. You can't do anything about that. You cannot do anything. That's why I'm going to bring this back around now. You got to recognize when you're lost. You got to realize. You got to be able to realize when you made that mistake. You got to realize, okay, you know, I chose a direction. I followed it. I'm not where I want to be right now. But I recognize that I'm not where I want to be. And now I can get the map out again. Now we can pull out the map. We're pouring over it. We're in an American diner. We're getting, one more coffee, please. You know, the woman in the pink gown comes over, she pours your coffee from that big fishbowl glass. You're pouring over the map. Now you can check. All right, little stop in the little boy's room. Back in the car. Doors closed, roof down. We're off. We're off again. Sure, okay, you've lost a little bit of time. You know, you've lost a little bit of time. But time's going to pass anyway. You're going to lose that time regardless. You know, you are going to, I can promise you that, you are going to lose that time. And you'll find that the more time you realize, once you realize you're lost, the more time you spend being lost, that's the time you're really going to appreciate, you know. You're going to explore somewhere new. You're going to see some things you never thought you'd seen before. I remember being in Liverpool the first time, driving through Liverpool at night the first time. I saw two hobos fucking on the side of the road. I never seen that before, but you know what? I still remember it to this day, and that was about 10 years ago. I see a lot of people talking about the fig tree analogy these days. The fig tree analogy. Oh, the fig tree analogy. Watch out, the fig tree's going to get you. I really like the bell jar in the least performative way. I really actually enjoyed the bell jar. You can check my Goodreads on that. But Sylvia Plath was a misery a little bit, and it's a shit analogy. You know, I'm no genius, but that's not a good analogy. You know, she's assuming that life is like a tree. You know, you grow in one branch, and then that's it. All the other branches wilt and die, I guess, immediately, and there's just this one branch that's alive on a tree. That's completely stupid. I've never seen a tree that looks like that. I've never seen that before in my life. You know, you can go back down the branch. You're not stuck, you're not stuck with that choice forever. You can just, oh, no, I'm going to go back this way, actually, guys. I'm going to choose another branch. I'm going to go climb up that one instead. You know, that one's got a nice conker up there. I'm going to go up the conker. Yeah, there's a couple of extreme situations, sure, where you can't go back. You know, you murder someone, you get 50 years in jail, whatever. Yeah, you are cooked, my friend, there, you know. But that's an extreme circumstance. 99% of these choices that you're making day to day, they're not going to be like that, you know. They're not going to be like that. If you go up the wrong branch, another wise man said, a different wise man, not Hector Barbosa, but you can just do a 360 and moonwalk out of there, you know. You don't have to stay there. You do not have to stay there. Everything in life is optional. So this analogy, I don't like it. Don't listen to these people who are using that analogy. It's a bad analogy. Just think about it for 1 second. It's a bad analogy. You can just 360, moonwalk, bye-bye, bye-bye. You know, you're not going to be worried about this stuff in 20 years, 10, 20 years. Actually, what you're really going to be thankful for is, wow, I'm glad I recognized I was lost and put myself on a better path there. And I learned something out of it at the end of the day, you know. What you got to realize is you've got Jack Sparrow's compass in your head. You know, I actually have a compass here. It's a gift from my mother. You've got Jack Sparrow's compass in your head. You just got to learn to read it. You've got to stop looking at all these flashing lights that are drowning your vision out. You've got to stop listening to this noise. You can't focus on the noise. Turn the radio down. Read the compass. That's all you got to do, man. The compass has an arrow on it. You just follow it. It's that easy. You just follow it, man. Thank you, Mother, for that. Actually, it was excellent. You know, I was a younger man, probably 14. I got some pretty unsolicited life advice from a older family member of mine. And the advice was, I want to throw up just saying it, that I should go out and find myself a test girl, or a test bird, I think he said, a test bird. And if you have the same question I had, let me explain what a test bird is. Because the first thing I said to him was, what the fuck are you talking about? I didn't say that. I was only 14. I didn't swear then, you know. I didn't cuss. But a test bird, he explained it to me. You got to go out and get a test bird. A test bird is the first girl that you get with. And you get in a relationship with her, and then you try all this weird shit out with her. You know, you try whatever you can think of out, you know, in every situation. And then you know, okay, this works, you know, I like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. Now you can get rid of her and you go find your real girlfriend, and the idea is you're better for her. Wow, what a terrible piece of advice that was. I'm so glad I did not listen to that. So much mistreatment of women in there. Performative, I know. God, I'm starting to look really performative. The bell jar, treatment of women. Terrible advice. Don't ever do that. Don't do that. It's terrible, especially for a 14-year-old, an impressionable 14-year-old. I almost thought it was smart for a second. But if you strip away all the horrible things about that advice, stay with me now. If you strip that shit away and you take out the women from here, you know, we're not hurting anybody anymore. I actually think there's some credence. There's something in there. There's a little nugget, little gold nugget of information in there. And what I think it is not going out and testing a bunch of weird shit out on a girl. You know, don't do that, or do it consensually if you're going to do it. Make sure she knows that's what you're doing. I think that the important piece of that is to try your own weird shit out in life. You know, you got to get yourself into situations. You got to be like a little lab rat, just being put in these situations. Where's the cheese? I've got to follow this maze. Okay, now I've got to taser my friend, and they give me the cheese, but I don't want to taser my friend. Now you won't taser your friend for some cheese. Now you've learnt that. You know, that's something you'll know for life. So I think it's important. Go out on all of your whims. You know, here I am. I'm making my first video essay. I never made a video essay before, but I'm interested in that. I enjoy them. I think it would be fun to make it. And so here I am, going on my whim. And you know what, maybe I'll learn at the end of this, wow, that sucked. And everybody hated it, and now everybody hates me. And then I'll never make one again. Or maybe I'll learn it was great. You know, when I was a teenager, I had tons of interest. When I was a young teenager, start of my teenage years, you know, had a ton of interest. I played an instrument. I played a couple of sports then. Me and my pals used to go out and make YouTube videos. We used to make YouTube videos all the time. And then I just gave it all up when I became a real teenager. You know, I took up the Xbox instead. That was the thing at the time. Call of Duty, you know, I used to love that. I used to love it. But when I was making these short clips and doing this stuff, I used to love doing that stuff. And they were shit. They were really, really not funny. They were terribly written, terribly acted, terribly shot. They were terrible. I would never subject anybody to watching any of that stuff. I've deleted all of them now. But imagine if I'd have stuck with that. Now that I've found that I'm interested, imagine if I'd have stuck with that. What the stuff I could have learned, the enjoyment I could have gotten out of it in those 10 years or whatever. And I didn't, man. And you know, I kick myself sometimes for it, but I shouldn't kick myself because that's the point. Now I've rediscovered it. I realized I was lost. Okay, I'm going to try this whim. You know, actually, maybe I enjoy this. And now I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to learn that, you know. I'm thankful for that. The learning's not going great, as you can probably tell. But I made the wrong call then. I kick myself sometimes, and then I have to kick myself for kicking myself. Because it's the wrong mindset. You can't be thinking, man, I wish I did this, I wish I did that. You got to be thinking, right, okay, what do I benefit from because I did that now? Well, now, you know, I've gone down this path, and I'm in a place where I can attempt to do that stuff. I can enjoy doing that stuff again. And so eventually I made the right call. So I think you got to go out and get lost sometimes. You know, I think you got to go out and have a test phase, not a test bird, a test phase. Try out new hobbies. You know, try out new hobbies. Try out a new interest. Crocheting or reading a book or reciting poetry while skiing down a mountain. Follow that whim. It's illegal in Switzerland, but do it anywhere else. I think you'll discover something that's really important to you if you do that. Even if it's not the hobby, you'll discover something around that. Because, you know, eventually we're all going to have to check our mirrors, apply the left indicator, and take a smooth left onto whatever street we call home. And it's too late then. It's too late by then. You know, you can't do anything then. It'll be way too late. You know, my ancestors, they actually came from Sweden. My second name's from here. My ancestors. And my great uncle came to visit a few years ago. I think they're from Gothenburg, my ancestors. But he traced it back and he found some living ancestors, maybe. I don't know, but he found the burial site, the family burial plot. So the story goes. And then he showed up there to this burial plot to see where all of our ancestral family is buried. And he had a grave prepared for him. You know, they prepared him a grave. I don't know how they knew about it. You know, I don't know the context of that story, but as far as I'm aware, he did not know about this grave until he showed up. And there's a hole in the ground with your name on it. And that's got me thinking about it, you know, while I was up here. I don't think I'm going to go to Gothenburg, but I was thinking about it. You know, what if I found my own grave here? It's pretty fucked up, you know. But I suppose we all have our graves all exist out there somewhere. Everybody has one. The only difference was he was staring his in the face. He was going, okay, there's the hole that they're going to put me in a cardboard box one day. You know, we're all heading there. That's the journey we're all on. That's where it's going to end for all of us. You know, there's no running away from that. As much as one may try, the only question you have to ask yourself is, if that's where I'm going, am I just going to take the straight motorway there? Am I going to take the straight highway? Or am I going to take the scenic route? You know, what am I going to do? There's people coming. Been to a lot of extreme places though. I'm damn sure I'm not done yet. Hope they are interested in this. No, I'm not done yet though. I'm not done yet. But hi. Hi. You know, in all those big moments on this travel, all the sound and the fury. The things that I found most meaningful to me were always in the small moments, you know? It was never the big moments. It was always, you know, this is about as good as it gets. You know, a handsome view, my car's parked 10 minutes away, nice cup of coffee, nice cigar sometimes. The excitement of having no idea where I'm going to go tomorrow, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to see, the people I might meet, who knows? I could meet my wife tomorrow, probably not, but who knows? You just got to keep heading north, man. You just got to keep heading in that direction. You know, I don't have anything else to do, you know? You don't have much of a choice. You just got to enjoy it. No, you don't have much of a choice, I suppose. Got to drive back home eventually. I do, unfortunately. Maybe I'll call my dad when I'm home, see when he's free. Maybe we can do something.